Lovely. So, hello everyone. This is Anne and Jonathan from Holistic Wellbeing, and today we're looking forward to welcoming numerologist Richard Abbot from thehermitage.org.
Welcoming once again.
Yes, once again. I was going to say, so welcome, Richard.
Yes, welcome, Richard. Nice to see you again.
Hello, nice to be back.
Fantastic. I think the last time we spoke was 2 years ago, wasn't it? When you did this great mini workshop for us.
Could have been a couple of years, yeah.
I believe that 2 years ago.
It was April 2020. And you did a fabulous workshop, which was, I believe, your numbers, your life path. And for anybody out there who's not seen that, what we'll do is we'll put a link in the description, won't we?
Yeah.
And then you can catch up.
Catch up on that.
Even today, people are watching it and coming back and just saying how much they thoroughly enjoyed it. So thank you so much for that, Richard. And it's wonderful to have you back. You know, we've been following your blogs, and you've covered so many controversial subjects in a brilliantly honest, no holds barred, no holds barred, if I can get my teeth in right way. And I know you've not let the grass grow under your feet, have you, in these last 2 years? So tell us, Richard, what have you been up to during this time? You've been a busy man.
Well, yeah, it's been a very busy time. Yeah, it's 2 years, isn't it? Yeah, it's been a very busy time. It's been, I see hardly any clients for consultations now here face to face. It used to always be people would come in and sit down and we'd do the sessions here. There's been none of that, and for obvious reasons, but not even any demand for it, really. I spend most of my time on Zoom talking to people from around the world. It's interesting because there are a lot of people who are thinking in a much more holistic, spiritual, conscious kind of way, more than I thought there were. I'll admit that. But so yeah, I've been spending 2 years really doing that, talking to people in the Far East in the morning, and people in the UK and Europe in the lunchtime and afternoon, and people in the US in the evening. It's been a bit full on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And how do you find it? How do you find working in Zoom rather than actually being in somebody's energy?
Well, if I'm honest, I think I probably prefer it.
Really?
Yeah, if I'm really truthful, I know that not everybody does, but I think I do prefer it, because it means that I can preserve my own energy a bit more strongly and a bit more consistently. And it also means, just from the practicality of what I've just said, that it means I can reach people around the world, people that simply wouldn't be able to come here. Although I have had people, back in the day, travel long distances to come here. That's never going to be the norm. So I think I'd probably prefer it.
Yeah.
But that's, it's individual. Just, I wouldn't want it to be imposed. I wouldn't want it to be the only thing that we had. But truthfully, for me, I think I probably prefer it.
Yeah. Oh, interesting, isn't it? I think we're quite the opposite, really, aren't we?
Well, I mean, I like. It doesn't matter either way for me. But I mean, the great thing what you said about Zoom there, Richard, is it allows us to get further out to the world, and I like how you've scheduled your times. I had this thing on my iPad called Time Buddy, so you have to kind of look when you're sorting out your appointments, and so yeah, I've got quite a few clients in Eastern Seaboard time in the States, and tea time's great for that, and they're just waking up, so yeah, I know where you come.
Well, you're busy when you're Time Buddy. I use the same app. When you're Time Buddy, you have to create extra pages.
Oh yes, yeah.
Countries and places that you're talking to. And it is quite the energy of that is quite interesting, actually, because I read somewhere a little while ago that people were talking about, people were breaking people down and saying, right, there's people who like citizens of the world who can live like anywhere. They could be living in London, and then done with London now, I'm going to go and live in Madrid. I'm done with that now, I'm going to go and live in Colombia. And I know people like that. People are kind of the everywhere, or rather anywhere, should I say, people of anywhere. And then you get people of somewhere who are like very much rooted in their physical community. So they grow up in a village or a town, and they travel a little bit, but they live there and they stay there, and they build their roots around that, build their life around all that. But all this kind of zooming in and out of places, it's very strange for your energy, because you're not rooted in one place, but yet you're not traveling all over the place either.
True.
You're doing kind of an in-between stage.
Yeah.
And it's very, I don't know, I suppose I'm still playing with it a little bit. It's very strange, because you're talking to one person 1 minute and it's good morning, and you're talking to somebody else the next minute and it's good evening, good afternoon.
Yeah.
And when you're doing that all the time, you're flying a little bit. It's like, well, where the hell am I?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's one of the great mysteries of life, isn't it? Where am I?
Well, indeed, yeah. But like the Zoom thing accentuates it, because of course, this is all completely new, and this is part of our development of consciousness in one way, shape, or form. Because many, only up until recently, you grew up, you only saw the people that you grew up with or were in the same town with. It was only in like our generation, really, when people started to say, well, I grew up in one part of the country, then I went to uni, and then I went to live somewhere else, or whatever. That's a very recent thing in the history of humanity.
It is, absolutely. And where we are, Richard, and where in Zoom land, where we are in the present moment. Yeah. So if you remember that, total mindfulness, no time or space. In reality, we're in the present moment. So in between those kind of other places that other people live. Yeah, but it's we talk about that, me and my eldest son, with the dialect stuff and how commuting, and the whole going to university, and like you say, moving out of your own area, living in the place, how that's affected dialect, and it's quite incredible. It's had a massive impact, actually. So perhaps Zoom will have an impact on us as well over the years.
I'm sure it will.
Yeah,
I think it will, because the Zoom thing is different from living in one area, going to uni, and then going to live somewhere else. It's not the same energy as that, because what you're doing there, if you grew up in Barnsley and you land up living in LA, then you were rooted in Barnsley, and then you're rooted in LA. You're still rooted. This Zoom land thing is a different kind of vibe entirely. You're not rooted in one place.
No. It's like I'm binge watching Star Trek: The Next Generation at the moment, and so it's like almost like being in the transporter all the time. You're not actually, you're in between two worlds, aren't you?
Well, it's almost like being out of your physical body, isn't it? Really?
Yeah.
You're not physically present in an actual location, are you?
Interesting concept. We could write a blog about all this.
We could do that, couldn't we? One thing I'm quite interested in asking you, Richard, is, I know Jonathan has noticed a difference in the theme of the readings that he's doing for people now, aren't you?
Yeah.
Do you want to just mention what's
yeah,
happening with yours? I'd be interested if it's Richard's experiencing a similar sort of thing.
Mediumship for me was starting off, we're connecting people's relatives and people who passed over, basically, helping to connect across the dimensions with that. And the emphasis has always been on, bringing that information through. However, over the last 2 years, I've noticed that I'm going down more of like a life path type of reading. So the people still come through, but it's more focused on actually where people are on their spiritual journey. The actual sitters, as I call them, my clients. It's more really to do with their spiritual journey now than just, am I going to get a new car, or am I going to get a better job, or whatever it might be. So there's much more information like that coming through, and people are becoming more and more receptive, or even wanting or needing that type of information. So I don't know, like Anne said, perhaps how you found it with the numerology,
Absolutely, yeah, agreed 100%. I mean, this is where, you see, this is where I think that all the crazy stuff that's happening in the world, although a lot of it is obviously very challenging indeed and not good, much of it is not good, maybe ultimately, in the long term, there's something good that's going to come out of this. Because I think that there is definitely a realization amongst a lot of people that the material things of life the ordinary things of life can be swept away in 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I wouldn't say, I wouldn't want to go too far with that. I wouldn't want to say that that is a mass awareness. I don't think that's a mass awareness at all. I think the mass of people are still, they haven't reached that point at all. But I think there are more and more people that are like, okay, COVID, go back further, Trump, go back further, Brexit, come back up to now Ukraine, any or all of it.
Yeah.
It's a reminder of the impermanence of material existence.
Great word. Love that.
Yeah.
So they say,
yeah.
So they sit with that for a while, and it's a bit uncomfortable probably, but they sit with it for a while and they go, okay, well, what is worth doing and knowing then? Okay, it's what is my reason for being here? What is my mission? What is my life path? What is my purpose? And that's where more and more people are interested in looking. There is still, I think, for quite a few people, and it's understandable in readings, there's still quite a bit of fear in terms of, well, what's going to happen, and is it going to financially, is it going to affect me, you know, in my relationship, and that's understandable, of course. But like you're saying, there's more and more people who are just saying this 3D life that we thought that was all there was. Well, come on, there's something else, and I want to know about the something else.
Yeah. And I've noticed as well, at least, well, going beyond the last 2 years, 3-4 years even, people were getting more information about moving away from their jobs. Yeah. And it started coming through about 2018 or so, did that. And I've noticed patterns, and you've probably noticed the same, Richard. We noticed patterns of information that's coming through, you know, and people actually being told, you've got to lose your job, right? But you don't even know where you're going after that. Yeah, literally, people have had to break the cycle, and just throw caution to the wind. You know, so I don't know whether you found that in your numerology readings.
100%, but it's tied into the most popular thing I'm asked, and this has been true for a number of years now. The most popular thing I've been asked is, where should I be living?
Yeah. Yes.
And I don't mean, you know, that house for 200 grand or that house for 220 grand. I mean, Colombia, or, you know, Vietnam, or the north of England. Like, I need to go somewhere. I'm feeling a calling to be in certain places. When should I go, and where should I go? That's been the most popular question for a number of years now. Yeah.
Everybody wants a house, a little cottage near a forest, with lakes and mountains nearby. Everybody wants one of those, and I'm thinking it's going to get a bit busy, isn't it? Really, you know.
No, to be fair, well, you're right, but to be fair, the number of people asking versus the number of people that would actually do it are another story. So, a lot of people are saying, you know, I'm feeling a calling to Costa Rica, I'm feeling a call to Mexico, I'm feeling a call to you know, the deep South of America or whatever. But then when I have the follow-up discussion, you know, a lot of them will not have actually done that. Understandably, it's a big move to make. Some will. I know plenty. I've been on a journey with a number of people now over the years who have made a significant geographical move, and it's tied into what you're talking about, that there's an energy. I call it like there's a sorting. People are being sorted.
That's
where they need to be.
Brilliant. I love that. And it's like, and the seeds are being sown through the readings, if you understand. It's like there's a seed planted in the mind, and they know that seed's there, and it just needs a little bit of germinating. And like you say, it might not end in that destination, but it's the fact that the seeds have been sown, and like you say, the sorting, and we call it finding your tribe, don't we? You know, so it's that kind of thing.
All the reading is a confirmation of what they're already wanting to do. I mean, that I get a lot of that. People are 70% of the way there, and the reading enables them to go the final segment of the journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, very interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
I've been watching quite an interesting series of programs recently about certain planetary alignments and when these certain planets align in a certain way. Over history, we've had these major events occurring. So we've had wars and we've had movements of the, all these different sort of rights and that. So, I mean, I suppose, when you think about it, there's a saying, isn't there, that it's written in the stars. Does numerology hint in the same way as what astrology hints? That events are going to happen at certain times, similar to planets coming into alignment.
Absolutely, 100%. What's the saying? History rhymes, it does not repeat. So that's important that it rhymes, but it's never the same. There was a numerological meme out there on the internet a few weeks ago. If you take the date of the start of the First World War, add it up, reduce it down to a single number. Take the date of the start of the Second World War, add it up, reduce it down to a single number. Take the date of the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
Yes, I've seen
add it up, reduce it to a single number. They're all the same number.
Yeah.
Now, does that mean the Russian invasion of Ukraine is World War III? I don't know whether I'd go that far, but what it if you kind of step back from it, what it shows is that it's like the universe offers us certain things at certain times. It's up to us what we do with them. So on the date of the start of the First World War, we were being offered a particular energy, and whether it's up to us whether we take it or not, and or what positive or negative of it we take. The same came at the start of the Second World War. The same came at the start of the Russia-Ukraine war. But all this, so there's lots of situations like that. But to me, it's all part of a bigger picture, because so we're in now the rulership of the number 2, right? So because it's 2022, but when it was 2021, we were still in the rulership of the 2.
Yeah.
And in 2046, we'll still be in the rulership of the 2, because the 2 is the start digit of the year. The last time that happened was in the 200s. Okay, so
you remember it well, don't you? Dear?
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, I'm slightly younger, so I don't quite remember it. But but if we don't remember it, we can Google it up, right? And we can Google up the crisis of the 3rd century, right? And the crisis of the 3rd century was a 50-year-long set of mega crises which occurred in the Roman Empire when the year started to something. So I don't know, there was an assassination in 220 AD, I think. There was a plague, there was a war, there was all sorts of like social breakdown and disintegration of systems, and major stuff went on in the 200s. Right? The last time the digit start was 2. Well, in fact, the last time it was 2 and then 0 to kick it off. It's the same now. It's the same now. Now, does that mean that all the time that the year is starting with a 2, we're going to be in total crisis? No, it maybe doesn't mean that. But yeah, because that's a long time. But
yeah,
it's that makes me think that this is not a couple of year phenomenon, what we're living through. This is ongoing now for a long time. A long time.
Yeah.
So we can point to particular dates and go, all right, so planetarily, 2024 is a hot spot. Numerologically, 2020 was a hot spot. But they're hot spots within like an overall series of many years, which is difficult.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And, go on.
No, it's okay. You're going.
I was going to say, it's not just the event itself, is it? It's the repercussions from that event as well,
Exactly. And because we're in this time of the 2, the repercussions. So 2 is associated with the element of water. Okay, so every time something happens in our world under the rulership of in the time of the 2, you go right back to from when you go right back to the start of the 2000s when George Bush was elected. W. Bush was elected as the president of America. Every time some major thing goes down, it's like somebody has thrown a pebble in the pond and the waves are rippling out.
Yeah.
The trouble is that we're not having individual events that get thrown into the pond and then the ripples ripple out and then they settle down. You get an event, there's ripples, there's another event, and there's a load more ripples, and there's another event, and there's a load more ripples. So that's the problem of our times, energetically, that we never get to recover from the previous thing that happened before the next thing happened.
Yeah, good point. Yeah.
And we can say, well, there's an orchestrated aspect to this, and this is how people, it's how power elites want it to be.
Distraction techniques.
Sure, but it's also a function of this 2 that we're in. So in this is what makes me think actually there's not a lot that you can, to some extent, there's not a lot that we can do about it. I don't mean that we should be completely passive and accept everything that happens, but this is going to be a time of stones in the pond, ripples out, whatever happens, whoever's in charge, whatever takes place in the world, it's going to be constant ripples from a new event, from a new event, from a new event.
Yeah.
And I think this is how it's going to be for a little while.
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. I kind of got to thinking that, it's like human, what's the word? Nature, and perhaps in modern times is we want everything now, And my first question when all this kind of kicked off over the last couple of years was, to my guys, was when's it going to end, and I got to the back end of 2020 thinking, I think we're kind of in this for the long haul now, really. This is going to take time, whatever we personally want or need from this situation, you're going to have to chill out and understand that this is going to take time, Yeah, totally agree with that.
And common sense would also confirm that, because you've only got to look around to see where most people are at, in that most people think that with regards to viruses and whatnot, that everything's fine and we're back to normal now. Thank you very much. I mean, there's not been any, and this is not a reason to be upset or depressed, but to me, there hasn't been a mass awakening at all. It hasn't happened, and I don't think that it will happen. And it doesn't matter that it hasn't happened, and it doesn't matter that it won't happen, because there will be enough. There will be enough people, and there is enough people who will awaken and will be open to this and will be drawn to, what you're doing, what we're talking about. It doesn't need to be everybody.
No.
And we're not dependent. We don't have to. Our happiness isn't dependent on a mass awakening.
Yeah.
That's very true. Yeah.
We call it critical mass, I think, don't we?
It's a small percentage, isn't it?
There's a critical mass. It's like in science, it's a critical mass really that's needed to tip the balance, so to speak. Yeah, if that makes sense with you, Richard.
It does. Well, I mean, it is said. I think it's an old. I think it's an old Buddhist. It might be Vedic. I can't remember. Idea that all you need in a population to shift things is the square root of 1% of the people.
Yes. Yeah.
1% square rooted. So if you think of Britain, what's Britain got? 60 million people. Is it 60 million? So the square root
keeps going up every month, I think. So.
Every day, I think now, isn't it?
Yeah, but we can't trust statistics anymore, can we?
No, we can't. But like the 1% of 60 million, if I do my calculator right, 1, 2, 3, 1% of 60 million is 600,000. Right? So the square root of that, square root of 600,000, is 775 people.
I think we're there.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and that's proper. It's in Buddhism or Vedic teachings. There's somewhere along the line I read somewhere some serious person that all you need is a square root of 1% of the group involved, and that will be the critical mass, and that will be the shift. And in Britain, that's only 775 people.
Yeah, yeah. Did you ever read the story about the monkeys in, was it South Pacific somewhere, where after the the Second World War, the campaigns had devastated these islands and devastated the natural population, and the American soldiers were noticing that these monkeys were actually starving because the food source had been decimated after repeated bombings and one thing and another. And so they started bringing in potatoes for the monkeys, and they'd never seen potatoes before. So what they had to actually show them what to do with the potatoes. So they washed them and then they gave them to the monkeys, and the monkeys then obviously started to understand that this was food and they could eat it.
I thought you were going to say they were going to chip them and fry them and things.
Well, they might have done for all I know. Yeah, could have set up a little business.
Yeah.
But
fish and chips would never take off.
Eventually, well, it was near the ocean. Eventually, they noticed that the female monkeys, the mothers, were going down to the water, washing the potatoes themselves, and then feeding the children. And but the amazing thing about it was that this was on one island, and then they started putting the potatoes out to other islands, and they didn't need to show the monkeys how to wash the potatoes. The monkeys already knew how to wash the potatoes,
100%. So the key phrase there is eventually. I mean, to me, that's the thing. It takes time, but then when it happens quickly.
Yeah, yeah.
Tidal wave, won't it?
Yeah.
And in fact, just you mentioned about the two relating to water, Richard.
Yeah.
Water's related to the emotions, isn't it, as well? So, can we relate this whole time to what's going on? It's all an emotional level, isn't it? We're all having to readjust to things. We're having to sort things out. We're having to, realise who we are, aren't we? And realise that there's more to life than the material.
Mm.
It absolutely is to do with emotions, and I think that actually there's a lesson in it for us, which is that emotion. So, back in the day, emotions were suppressed and denied. In the world that I grew up in, the world that I was born into, emotions were suppressed and denied largely, generally in society.
Yeah,
you must be rational, you must be sensible. Whatever your feeling is, just irrelevant. Forget about it.
Yeah.
That was no good. But it's equally no good if everything is about emotions.
Yeah.
Right. And that's what we've done, I think. I think we've gone from suppressing and denying emotions to completely giving them free rein without check, without thought, literally without thought.
Yeah.
And that is a big problem, because it means that people can be scared, feared into certain things.
Yeah.
Right? So this situation with Ukraine, obviously, it's extremely, extremely bad and extremely terrible. Any killing of any kind, of any description, is a tragedy and a disaster, and absolutely horrendous and unacceptable. Right? But it's not enough of an analysis of it to just be outraged. There's another dimension that you have to look at and go, well, hang on a minute. Well, why is it happening? It's not just because he's evil. You've got to look at more of it. And we don't want to do that. So all this chaos in our world will continue, I think, until enough of us are prepared to say, yeah, feelings is absolutely crucial. They're absolutely important, but we've got to match them. We've got to match them and join them and balance them and integrate them with our thoughts, with our mind.
Yeah. There's always room for rationality in everything. And like you say, common sense, which has been a very rare commodity over the last couple of years or so, in my book anyway. That we need to, but it's always tipping the balance to the extreme, isn't it? It's either one way or the other. You know, humanity never seems to find that fine balance, does it? It's always, like you say, one or the other, one or the other. You know, extremes.
And that's an emotional state. So you can pick anything that's going on in the world or gone on in the world in this century, and the reaction is entirely emotional from most people. Yeah. Trump is either the savior or he's the devil. Right. And there's nobody wants to think in the middle. And actually, in certain situations, he might be exactly what's required. And in other situations, he might be completely not what we need. There could be a balanced point. Nobody's interested in it.
Yeah.
Well, I say nobody. Most of the masses are not interested in it. But our job, I think, certainly what I try to promote to people, is that we've got to be the people in the middle who are going to think.
Yeah.
And think.
Yeah.
I think that's the biggest key, isn't it? Thinking, rather than sitting in front of this screen thing and having everything fed to us, and everything that comes through that screen is the absolute truth, and I'm not going to hear anything against it. That's where the danger is, isn't it? You know, and for me, there's been certain instances in my life that somebody has been so emphatic at forcing a point. I thought, hang on a minute, what's behind this? There's something not quite right.
Yeah.
And I think this now is, we need this rational thinking, is questioning more than anything, rather than just believing what we're being told. Even by trustworthy sources, we've all got opinions, haven't we? You know, but there's so many different sides to stories. There's not just two sides. There's lots of other things that link in. And until I think we've got a balance feeling, we can see the whole picture. How can we actually form any sort of sense of knowing about it?
Well, agreed to all of that, but I think the good thing is, this is where I'm not all that depressed. I'm not depressed at all, really, about if things continue in this way. Because if things continue in this way, then more people will wake up.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We've said that, haven't we?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, my guide said, look, the more that they repeat this kind of behaviour, and you use rhyming rather than repeat, the more people will begin to question the narratives, you know? And it's like, well, hang on, that's not right. You know, it's that moment, isn't it, where someone thinks, wait a minute, they told us this, but yet we're doing this, you know?
We were promised X, Y, Z.
Absolutely. And people don't forget that kind of stuff. That's one thing that people don't forget, is that feeling of perhaps we've been duped or we've been misled or something like that, you know?
Continuous moving of goalposts, isn't it?
Yeah.
The emotion bit is what makes it more tricky, because if anybody would sit down and think about any of the things that have gone on in the past few years, it wouldn't take long. You don't have to be a PhD. It wouldn't take long to work out the holes in all of the stories that have come at us. But emotion, like heightened emotion, like outrage, fear, terror, horror, images on the screen all the time, this is what it's like, that closes up the holes. Because people are like, no, I can't think critically about this because I've been feared into it. So it's the fear factor which is the killer. That's the thing that's stopping people from waking up. But you know, it can only be doubled down on for so long.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm thinking about going back to the number 2. It's obviously 2 is the duality, isn't it? It's the basis of creation, really, is 2. It's good and evil, you know, right and wrong, dark and light, and everything. And so, you know, it's just come to me now, and you might disagree or agree with it, Richard, that the 2 affect everything that we know in physical creation. Yeah, it's everything. So I completely get where you're coming from when you're saying that, you know, this is going to take time. You know, it's like I don't know what your thoughts are on that, really.
No, you're right. You're absolutely right, because 2 is associated with water, the element water, and it was certainly the ancient Greeks, and probably many others as well, certainly the ancient Greeks, who reckoned that life begins in water. Life comes from water.
Yeah.
It's the feminine. 2 is the feminine. 1 is the masculine. 2 is the feminine. And it is the feminine who gives birth to new life. So you're right. It is 2 is a very significant number for all of creation. And what we give birth to now during this time is very important. And that's another reason why I'm actually more optimistic than I might sound, because a lot of things are beginning during this time, and they're beginning in very, very small ways. But in 50, 100, 200, 300, 400 years' time, I'm convinced that things that are seeded now will be institutionalized. There'll be big stuff.
Yeah.
And so it could be your center. It could be my work. It could be the work of somebody out there listening to us. That could be a seed. And right now it's only a seed, but that could be a seed which in 50, 100, 200 years' time is something extremely significant in our society, in our world. I think it's that big, the level of change that we're on. All of the institutions, I think all of the institutions we have in our society now, I think most of them will be pretty much dead within 100 years.
Yes.
Let's hope so.
Yeah. I can see that coming, you know. And the control systems that go along with that as well, you know, because that's the key to the awakening, I feel, for many people, is understanding the control systems behind it. And once we kind of grasp that, then it helps us to understand the why, you know, and how these things occur in life. I get that. Yeah,
absolutely. But you see, in order for us to do that, we're all subject to this 2-ness. We're all subject to this emotion of the 2, which is good on one hand and not so good on the other. So just maybe mildly controversial, but it's important in the passage of awakening. If we're gripped by outrage or emotion of any kind, that's blinding us. Right? So it is no good. It's no good to blindly accept the narrative fed up by the BBC, for example. Right? It's no good to do it. It's absolutely crazy to do that. Right? But it is equally as crazy to say, I hate the BBC. I'm completely outraged by it. It should burn. It is a terrible thing. And all the people that work for it are evil. That's no good, because you're lost then in an emotional response.
Yeah.
The truth of the matter is that the BBC, it's just an example. The BBC and organisations like it are subject to a groupthink. In order to be in organisations like that, you have to abandon your independent thought to fit in. Bigger the institution, more established the institution, the worse the groupthink is.
Yeah.
It's not about worshipping the institution, as some do, or wanting to destroy it, as some do. It's about seeing the reality, and then you can move beyond it. Because if you're just coming from outrage, which is kind of understandable, right? But if we're just coming from outrage at any of the things that are going on, I think there's a risk that we will end up overcorrecting, and we will end up throwing out the baby with the bathwater. That's the problem, I think.
Yeah. Do you think we should be more like Spock from Star Trek then, Richard?
Well, no, he was all thought and no emotion, wasn't he? All thought.
Absolutely. Yeah. Very logical.
Well, what? Okay, so you were saying about Star Trek Next Generation. So, what did they have in? It wasn't my favourite one, actually. Voyager was my favourite one.
Okay, yeah.
What did they have in Next Generation? They had. So Captain Picard was all about. He was the decision maker.
Yeah.
Right, but didn't they have, what's her name? Deanna Troi, who was like
the emotional, the counsellor,
emotional point of view.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. And Data, who was pure android logic.
Right, and Captain Picard would have to balance those 2 points of view.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's what we've got to be.
Well, the key word is balance, isn't it?
Yeah.
And let's hope the number 2, one of the good aspects of number 2, is bringing in that balance.
It is bringing in the balance. It's just that a lot of people are resisting the balance and are fearful of what it will bring.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, it is. The key word is fear, isn't it?
Yeah. Is there a number that is the balance number, Richard, in numerology? I don't know if I'm kind of
Well,
making any
I
sense
mean,
there, really.
no, it makes perfect sense. It depends on your point of view. Some people say that 6 is the balance number.
Okay.
Actually, 6 is the one that is meant to be most associated with the heart chakra. However, there's also another argument which says, well, yeah, but that's not balance because it's still only one part of the body.
Yeah.
The real way to get balance is to incorporate the lessons of all of the numbers.
Yes.
Right. So it depends on your point of view here. 2 enables us to have a richer experience of life. Because 1 was all about the masculine and it was all about mind. 2 is also about the feminine and is also about feelings, not instead of, but as well as.
Yeah.
That enables us to have a richer experience in our life. But there's a lot of, as you were saying, and there's a lot of fear about what that looks like. And that's the root of all this.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But we don't have to succumb to that. I mean, we might be affected by it sometimes, but we don't have to succumb to that. We can embrace the being more emotional without sacrificing our logic and reason. It's not one, or it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both.
No, it's very true. Very true. Yeah.
But a lot of people think it's got to be one or the other. Even people in holistic and spiritual kind of fields, they think it's got to be one or the other. A lot of people who come to this subject, they despise logic and reason and rational thinking. They can't stand it. They want to sweep it out of the way. That's not the way. It's got to be both things.
Absolutely.
It's got to be both.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's my heart there. It's got to be both.
Yeah. I suppose really it's the same with politics, isn't it? You're either this side or you're that side, or if you like us, you're no side at all.
Yeah.
You know?
And it serves agendas to drive a wedge between these things.
Absolutely. Division is a big thing, isn't it?
And it's the 2 again, the divide, isn't it? You know, the 2, very powerful, very potent. I was given a little bit of information a good while ago about the Yin and Yang symbol. And I just think whoever created that symbol visually was just genius. And they said to me that, so you've got the representation of the light and the dark, the duality, the whole of the circle itself, so the wholeness, you know. And they said that what part of that symbol, the meaning of that symbol is, if you imagine the picture of I call them fish, by the way. You know where the little fish kind of merge together, so the light and the dark that's touching. They said where you need to be is the line between those 2. Yeah, that's where we need to be. Yeah, not here, not there, but the line between the 2. So we're talking balance, aren't we?
100%. I mean, I always point people to the fact that there is a black dot in the white fish, dot in the black fish, and therefore that even in good things there is darkness and even
absolutely.
Dark. Yeah, and we know that, but that sometimes is a bit challenging because that we've got to map that into the practical world and say, well, that means that in this war there's no good and bad. It's not as simple as that. It's not as simple as that.
Yeah.
A bit challenging for some people.
I think it's allowing people to gravitate towards that line rather than trying to push people in a certain direction. You came out with a good saying the other day, didn't you, where you said about all this inclusivity that's going on right now is actually causing more division than ever before.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
It's the total polar opposite.
You know, we're not being allowed to just accept things. We are told you have to believe this, you have to say that, you cannot say this. I'm sorry, you know.
The quest to be more inclusive has absolutely, it's an absolutely toxic, absolutely toxic movement, as is the quest for increased diversity, because in reality, not in theory, in reality, it's never diversity. Never diversity, and it's never inclusion. It's only inclusion of the people that and the ideas that you agree with. It's acceptance of the ideas of the people that you agree with. It's not what it says on the tin.
It's not at all. You know, and it should be about living in acceptance. You know.
Well, I subscribe to the old-fashioned idea of live and let live.
Absolutely.
But we are, if you subscribe to that, this is not the dominant idea in society now. The dominant idea in society is that you can't, there are certain things which are just simply unacceptable. And that's extremely dangerous. But it is all part of this too. It's all part of this. We were all in one direction, and then we've gone all in another direction, and eventually we'll find a balance. But what the world will look like by that time, I don't know.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah,
whether we'll still be here to witness that, I don't know. But from my perspective, is people who come to me, maybe same with you, Richard, is that there's definitely a shift, and definitely this underlying spiritual connection that seems to be developing, and like I say, whether we witness these things in our lifetime, I'm already witnessing that. I'm already witnessing the change, the shift in the thought patterns, and particularly, like I say, the spiritual aspect of it all. People are having very abrupt awakenings, literally. I mean, I'm talking like one lady came to me and she said, prior to June last year, she was a complete normie, she kind of said, in her own words. And then after June, the world totally changed. She was a totally different person, and so we're seeing that level of abrupt awakening within people. But of course, there are people out there who need to do things slowly and gently. But a question I was going to ask you, actually, Richard, was I've seen a lot of talk about the number 3 recently, 33, or around that. Is there anything you can tell us why that might be important at this moment in time?
Well, sure, yeah. So just on the previous point for a second, I mean, to me, every media lie, every corruption exposure, every inconsistency, every falsehood that is pushed out there is to be celebrated, because every time there is a distortion or falsehood or an inaccuracy or an inconsistency, then somebody somewhere is going, hang on a minute, this done that up, and every time they just go harder and harder and harder with the distortion, if we're being kind, and the lie if we're not being so kind. Every time we get that, it's a reason for a celebration, because somebody's going, hang on a minute, this is not right. And it might be the first realization that they have, or that might be the thing that makes them go, okay. So this all points to the fact of this ongoing, like, overarching idea that there is some kind of great awakening going on. I'm a bit suspect about that, whether it's a great awakening, but there's plenty of people. And it all ties in with, what people are increasingly talking about, which is some kind of, biblical Book of Revelation, apocalypse kind of situation. That's maybe a topic for another day. But the number 33, the core of the number 33, it's the number of Christ. That's what it is.
Okay.
It's been co-opted by people who want to say that actually, no, it's a very dark number. It's the number of the highest degree of Freemasonry. So it's the secret society behind the secret society. Yeah. And maybe they use it for that, but the core of the number, the real truth of the number, and that's why Russell Brand's got it on his arm.
Okay. Yeah, that came up in conversation.
All right, yeah. I don't know, but I'll believe you.
It's the number of Christ. So if he's listening out there, I know why you've had it done, because you're trying to form an association with Christ, or you think you are, and that's okay. But I think so. That's an example of what we're talking about. That. There's one narrative which says no, this is the mark of evil, mark of the highest degree of Freemasonry. This is where all the scumbags are. 33. Yeah. No. There's a long history of scholarship which says it's the number of Christ. Right? What's the truth? You got to find the truth somewhere in between.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Because the truth is twisted, isn't it? So whatever the truth is, there's someone out there who will always twist it to make it mean something total polar opposite, really. And
Well,
I think
it's the same with symbols, isn't it?
absolutely,
You know, some of the most beautiful spiritual symbols have been turned around in history.
You know, the Nazis use the swastika.
That's a very good example, actually. That's a brilliant example of the same thing.
The Antikarana. Yeah.
The swastika was ancient, thousands and thousands of years. Always about luck and good fortune. And always about positive sun and light.
Yeah.
Right? And it was then twisted into something else.
Right?
So but the original meaning of it and the original depiction of it, where it's a bit more flat and rather it being on its diagonal, the joy of that never goes away. The positivity of that never goes away, even if some people are intent on distorting it.
Yeah. So whenever we're creating symbols, we need to be careful that they never get corrupted.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, they might. Well, my point is that they might get corrupted, but they can only get corrupted by corrupt minds in the first.
Yeah, that's very, very true. Very true. I'm becoming very mindful of the time. Richard, you've just written a new book. Is that right? You've just released a new book. Would you like to take a couple of minutes just to tell us about that before we close off?
Thank you. Well, very kind. Yes, Soul Strong. It's called Volume 1. I mean, there'll be a Volume 2 eventually. I don't know when. But Volume 1, Soul Strong, and it's as the title says. If we want to come through this, if we want to make this balance, see the reality of things, not get dragged into the outrage, not get locked into the fear, then it's not about being strong in our mind. It's not about being strong in our feelings. It's not even about being strong in our body. It's about being strong in our soul. And if we are strong in our soul, then we know what we are here to do. We know how to find that. We know how to walk the path. We've got a map. We've got the support of teachers throughout history to guide us and protect us along the way. The book deals with all of those things: how to access it, how to walk that path confidently. It's about being who you really are.
Being authentic, then I take it.
Completely authentic, but like basing that in something, not basing that in, oh, this is what I feel like being today. Basing it in something more real than that, in the soul. That's what it's about. I've sold quite a lot of copies, actually. I've gone all around the world. I'm quite pleased.
Where can people get hold of a copy, Richard? On your website? On
my website, yes. It's only on my website.
We'll put a link to Richard's website again in the description, won't we?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. No, it sounds fascinating.
Well, it's been wonderful catching up with you, Richard. Yeah. Really appreciate your time.
Time's caught up with us again. Could talk to you all day, but, life goes on.
We'll have a part 2 another time, perhaps.
Well, thank you. Yeah, life does go on. Life will go on. Whatever's going on, life finds a way.
Always does.
It does. So, yeah, nice to see you both.
It does indeed.
Okay.
Right, okay.
All right, Richard. Thank you very much. Yeah.
Thank you for joining us.
Catch up again, hopefully, sometime soon.
Absolutely.
Okay.
See you later.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.